In 48 hours, Europe's most valuable technology company lost €60 billion. No earnings miss, no scandal, no product recall, just a single news report about a company almost nobody outside China had ever heard of, that had started building a machine. This is the story of the most important machine on Earth, the one company that makes it, and whether China just broke the monopoly. Here is what actually happened. On July 27, a report said China had begun manufacturing its own lithography machines, the machines that print computer chips. The next day, Reuters confirmed it. The first machines are going to 3 of China's biggest chip makers. And chip stocks fell everywhere. In Seoul, the market closed down almost 11%, the crash we covered in the last episode. That fear? This was it. Now, why should you care about one factory machine? Because everything you own runs on chips. Your phone has around 15 of them. The car outside has more than 1,000. And a single artificial intelligence data center runs on tens of thousands of processors. Every one of those chips, every single one, was printed by a machine like this one. Whoever controls the printers controls the price of everything electronic. The machines come from one company, ASML, in a Dutch town called Veldhoven. Not the most valuable company in Europe by accident, it is the only company on Earth that can build the top-end machine. Its customer list is short: TSMC, Samsung, Intel, SK Hynix. And the price? €183 million for one machine. The newest model costs $380 million. That is the price of a passenger jet, for one factory tool. So what does a machine like that actually do? It starts with a drop of molten tin, about 30 millionths of a meter across. The machine fires these droplets across a vacuum chamber, 50,000 of them, every second. Each droplet is hit by a laser. Twice. The first pulse flattens it into a pancake. The second vaporizes it into plasma at about 220,000 degrees, roughly 40 times hotter than the surface of the sun. That flash gives off exactly the light this machine needs, a wavelength of 13.5 nanometers. And this light is so extreme that air absorbs it. Glass absorbs it. Lenses are useless. So the whole machine runs in a vacuum. And the light is steered by mirrors, the flattest objects ever manufactured. Scale one up to the size of Germany, and its tallest bump would be under a millimeter. After bouncing between those mirrors, the light lands on a silicon wafer, and prints circuit lines thousands of times thinner than a human hair, layer after layer, 100 times over, until it becomes a chip. Which raises the obvious question. If one machine is worth that much, why doesn't somebody else just build one? They tried. Nikon and Canon, 2 giants of optics, looked at this technology and walked away from it. Because ASML doesn't really build the machine alone. The optics come from Zeiss, in Germany. The lasers come from Trumpf. The light source from Simmer, in California. Around 5,000 suppliers, 100,000 parts, 2 decades of work, and roughly $10 billion of research, before the first machine ever turned a profit. That is not a product. That is an ecosystem, and you cannot order one. Now add politics. Since 2019, China has been banned from buying the top-end machine. The export license is simply not granted, but the older machines were allowed, and China bought them by the shipload, stockpiling ahead of every new restriction. By 2023 it was 29% of everything ASML sold. By 2024, 36%, more than a third of the whole company. 2025, 33%. And now the tap is closing. ASML expects China to fall to around 20% this year. Beijing's answer to losing its supplier is the news we started with. So who actually built it? A company called Shanghai Aishengna. It was founded in August 2023, which makes this machine's manufacturer younger than most YouTube channels. Registered capital, about $1 billion. Shareholders, the state, all of it. The machine itself was developed by a team from a stealth company called Yuliangsheng, and one has been quietly running inside SMIC's factory since September of last year. The plan, 5 machines this year, and around 20 next year. And here is the part the viral headlines leave out. This is not the banned machine. ASML's top machine prints with light at 13.5 nanometers. China's new machine prints with light at 193, 14 times coarser, and a design ASML first shipped back in 2007. It is like being handed a marker pen and told to draw a hairline. There is a workaround. Print the same layer 4 separate times, each pass slightly offset, and you can squeeze finer patterns out of coarse light. That is exactly how SMIC already makes 7-nanometer chips today. It works. It is also slower, more expensive, and it throws away a far bigger share of every wafer. So let's line them up honestly. Light, 13.5 nanometers, against 193. Best chip, ASML's customers are in production at 2 nanometers. China's route reaches 7, the hard way. And then the number that matters most. ASML will ship around 130 of these immersion machines this year. China plans 5. That is not a competitor. That is 4%. So why did 60 billion euros evaporate? Because a machine that works in a demonstration and a machine that works in a factory are different animals. JP Morgan put it bluntly, producing a handful of tools is not the same as producing tools for high-volume manufacturing. Can it hold alignment across thousands of wafers? Nobody has said. Can it run every hour of every day for a year, without wrecking the run? Unknown. What share of the chips come out actually working? The yield? Also unknown. And some critical parts are still imported from Japan, which means a machine built to escape export controls is itself one export rule away from stopping. Here's the thing though, the market is not pricing in 5 machines, it is pricing in a pattern. Solar panels, Chinese cells were dismissed as low quality in 2005. China now makes the overwhelming majority of the world's solar panels. Batteries, copycats, they said, around 2012. Today most of the world's electric vehicle batteries are Chinese. Electric cars, a joke in 2015. China is now the largest car exporter on the planet. Lithography, 2026, a handful of tools. And the next act is already filming. A Huawei-linked prototype of the banned machine reportedly produced stable 13.5 nanometer light in December. That is unconfirmed. It is underpowered, at roughly a fifth of the light a factory needs, but so was the first version of everything else on this list. So what does all of this actually mean for you? Short answer, tomorrow, nothing. Your phone is not about to change. This decade, quite a lot. The world is splitting into 2 chip supply chains. One of them, ASML, TSMC, the frontier, makes the processors behind advanced artificial intelligence. The other one makes the vast, unglamorous majority, the chips in cars, in appliances, in chargers, in machines. China is aiming at the second chain, with state money and no need to turn a profit. And when that market floods, mature chips get cheaper, while the companies making them today lose their pricing power. Then there's the quieter consequence. Every export ban from here works a little less well than the last one. That is not a prediction about a share price. It is a map of where the pressure goes. So, is China a threat to ASML today? No. 5 machines against 130, at the previous generation, with the hardest problems still unsolved. But that was never really the question. ASML's moat was never one machine. It was the belief that nobody else could ever assemble the whole chain. This week, somebody switched a chain on. It is slower. It is cruder. It is years behind. It is also running. If you want the other half of this story, the day this exact fear crashed an entire stock market, that is the last episode, and it is linked on screen. Because the thing to watch now isn't the machine they built, it's the one they are still trying to.